Hello and welcome back to Finance House. When we think of Napoleon Bonaparte, we picture grand battles, brilliant military strategy, and a continent in flames. But behind the smoke of cannons and the clash of swords, another war was being waged, a financial war. This wasn't just a conflict of armies, but a battle of budgets, bonds, and banks. The Napoleonic Wars, from 1803 to 1815, weren't just about redrawing the map of Europe. They were about rewriting the rules of money itself. Today, we're diving into the incredible untold story of how this conflict pushed nations to the brink of bankruptcy and, in the process, created the modern financial world we live in today. From the birth of the income tax to the rise of banking dynasties like the Rothschilds, this is the cost of empire. Let's set the stage. At the dawn of the 19th century, Europe was a powder keg. France, under the ambitious Napoleon, was on a mission to dominate the continent. Standing in his way was Great Britain, a global maritime and commercial power. This wasn't a limited gentlemanly war. It was total war, demanding unprecedented levels of national mobilization. And that required one thing above all else: money, staggering amounts of it. Britain, an island nation, couldn't match France's massive land army. So it adopted a different strategy: subsidize its allies. London became the paymaster of Europe, funding the armies of Austria, Prussia, and Russia to keep Napoleon's forces tied down. But where did this money come from? The British government couldn't simply raise taxes on tea and stamps to fund a continental war. It needed a revolutionary financial weapon. Enter Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger. In 1799, he introduced something truly radical: the world's first national income tax. For the first time, a government claimed a direct share of its citizens' earnings. It was meant to be a temporary measure, just for the war, but as we all know, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary tax. This wasn't just a new revenue stream. It was a fundamental shift in the relationship between the state and the individual. Your income was now a matter of national security. But even with the income tax, it wasn't enough. Britain's war expenditure was astronomical, reaching over 20% of its national income. The solution was debt. Not just any debt, but a new, sophisticated system of government bonds known as consols. These were perpetual bonds with no maturity date, paying a steady interest rate. The government sold these bonds to the public, to merchants, and to the burgeoning financial class in the City of London. This created a massive liquid market for government debt. It allowed Britain to borrow on a scale never seen before, effectively mortgaging its future to defeat Napoleon in the present. This system was so successful that it became the bedrock of public finance, the model for how governments fund everything from wars to welfare programs right up to this day. Britain weaponized its credit. Now, let's cross the Channel to France. Napoleon was a military genius, but he faced his own set of financial challenges. The French Revolution had wiped out the old system of royal finance, and the nation was deeply suspicious of paper money after the disastrous assignat currency experiment. Napoleon famously declared, "To have money is to have the sinews of war." He understood the game. His solution was more direct and, frankly, more brutal. Napoleon made war pay for itself. As his Grande Armée marched across Europe, it lived off the land. Conquered territories were forced to pay massive indemnities, huge sums of cash and resources that flowed directly back to the French treasury. In essence, Napoleon funded his empire through plunder. He squeezed Italy, Germany, and Spain to finance his campaigns against Britain and Russia. This approach had a major weakness, though. It was entirely dependent on continuous victory. As long as Napoleon was winning, the cash kept flowing. But the moment his military machine stalled, as it did in the disastrous Russian campaign of 1812, the financial system collapsed with it. Unlike Britain's stable debt-fueled model, Napoleon's was a high-stakes gamble. When the victories stopped, the money ran out. This continental struggle created a vacuum, and a new power rose to fill it: the international bankers. And no name is more synonymous with this era than Rothschild. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, a coin dealer from the Frankfurt ghetto, sent his 5 sons to the major financial capitals of Europe: London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt. They built a financial network that was faster and more reliable than any government's. Using a network of couriers, carrier pigeons, and trusted agents, the Rothschilds could move money, and more importantly, information across war-torn Europe faster than anyone else. They knew the outcomes of battles before kings and ministers did. Their most legendary feat came after the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Nathan Rothschild in London received news of Napoleon's defeat a full day before the British government. Legend has it that he used this information to make a killing on the London Stock Exchange. While the historical details are debated, the core truth is undeniable. The Rothschilds leveraged their unique information network to build a colossal fortune. They weren't just speculators, they became the bankers to nations. They financed Britain's subsidies to its allies, organized massive government loans, and helped stabilize currencies after the war. They pioneered international finance, creating a private financial empire that transcended national borders. They demonstrated that in an age of warring empires, the real power belonged to those who controlled the flow of capital. The Rothschilds weren't just funding the war, they were building the foundations of a new world order where finance was king. So, what was the long-term legacy of this epic financial conflict? First, the sheer scale of the debt was staggering. By 1815, Britain's national debt was over 200% of its GDP, a level that makes our modern debt crises look mild. This massive debt overhang shaped British economic policy for the next century. The need to service this debt forced the government to maintain a strong, stable currency, leading to the adoption of the gold standard in 1821. This made the British pound the world's reserve currency, cementing the City of London's role as the globe's financial center for 100 years. Second, the war professionalized state finance. Before Napoleon, governments were often run like personal estates. The Napoleonic Wars forced the creation of modern professional finance ministries and central banks like the Banque de France, founded by Napoleon himself in 1800. These institutions were designed to manage national debt, control the money supply, and provide financial stability. The very machinery of our modern economic state was forged in the crucible of this war. Third, the conflict accelerated the shift of economic power from land to capital. The old aristocracy, whose wealth was in land, was eclipsed by a new class of bankers, merchants, and industrialists who profited from the war. The financial markets of London, Paris, and Amsterdam became the new battlefields, where fortunes were won and lost, and the fate of nations was decided. The Napoleonic Wars were more than just a series of battles. They were a financial revolution. They showed that wars are won not just by generals, but by treasurers, not just with cannons, but with credit. The financial innovations born out of this desperate continent-wide struggle, from the income tax to the national debt market, from central banking to international finance, are the very pillars of our global economy today. So, the next time you look at your pay slip and see that income tax deduction, you can thank, or perhaps blame, the desperate struggle to stop Napoleon. The cost of his empire was bankruptcy and ruin for millions, but it also forced the birth of a new financial world. The echoes of his cannons have long faded, but the financial systems built to defeat him are still with us, shaping our lives every single day. Thanks for joining us on Finance House. If you found this journey through financial history as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the hidden world of money. We'll see you in the next video.